Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give people 1 more minute to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, we'll get started. Hi again, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ariel Paulius. I'm here with Curious Canada. If you haven't heard of Curious, we're a global data analytics consulting company, operating in 18 different countries across the globe. And I'm very happy to have with me today our Director of Data Science, Raz, as well as our close partner, Liam from Alteryx. They'll each introduce themselves in a moment when they'll get to their portion. We do have a tight and packed agenda for the day, so we'll get started. And just to quickly level set on what we have planned for you, we'll get started with a quick introduction on the value of being data-driven, which will be led by Liam. We'll move over to Raz and zoom in deeper into loyalty programs, their challenges, and of course solutions as well. That's what you're here for. And after that, we'll wrap things up with a few recommendations and of course open up to Q&A. We do promise to try and give it all in 30 minutes, but it will be tight. Please type in your questions in the questions panel as we go along. We'll try to address as many as we can at the end. And this webinar will be recorded. You will get a link to the recording afterwards. So don't worry, you don't have to take notes. Everything's going to be shared with you afterwards. So with that, let's get started. I'll move it over to Liam, and I wish you all a interesting half an hour.
Thanks, Ariel. I really appreciate the introduction. As Ariel said, my name is Liam Hay. I'm an Alteryx Canada account executive. And what I'm going to kind of talk about today is just give everyone just some kind of thoughts as we go through this and what we at Alteryx are really trying to achieve. So as you can see here, this slide, data-driven businesses are succeeding. So this is some information from McKinsey where basically the value of data and the benefit of it is everyone knows it, but as we're becoming more and more focused on it and it's driving our businesses, the success is really being seen. So, just to kind of read this quickly, working with agility, 19 times more likely to be profitable, 77% more likely to significantly exceed business goals when working with data, 23 times more likely to acquire new customers because you're better able to understand your customers, you're able to retain them because you understand what the process is that they are as your customer, and then developing talent inside the organization as well. So, these are 3 areas that we really focus on, and we see a lot of importance when we work with customers that are data driven. However, part of the what we've noticed in the industry, and it's probably not a surprise to anyone, is that not every organization is fully data driven yet. So I believe as McKinsey as well said, only about 31% of companies are fully data driven. So why is that really? Why is that the situation? Because everyone understands the importance of it, but it's also very difficult. So what stands in the way of achieving these outcomes? So data, process, people, right? A disconnected approach that really prevents people from achieving that goal. So as you can see, processes that are very manual, unoptimized, there's no automation in those. As well, the data that people are working with, it's limited, it's slow to get. You're probably working with multiple sources. Most companies, are using at a minimum of five data sources to accomplish one task, which can obviously take a fair amount of time. And then lastly, is the people that are working with data. It's difficult if there's disjointed, the way that they're going about it, the approaches that they're having can be, again, very manual. It can be out of date, and it's the skills that are there sometimes they're not being fully upskilled. So at Alteryx, what we try to achieve and what we believe ourselves to be help to bring those 3 areas together. So with our new announcement of analytics process optimization allows us to align these assets. So First, it means by which we automate the many levels of process in our companies, everything from simple data acquisition and transformation to enriching, analyzing, delivering actual insights. And by freeing up resources who used to be trapped in these processes, we get to redeploy those folks to really focus on new, innovative, and high-value work. And that can really spark a cultural change and build a digital-ready workforce. And finally, none of this would be possible without the transformative thinking about the data itself. We go into these processes with the hard-won understanding that technology doesn't deliver value and change process alone. It's the data that provides the actual insights that you are able to provide up to your organization. And that's the platform advantage. So we really think by helping folks to unify these three areas can really help become more data driven and achieve those goals that we talked about on the first slide. So I'm going to hand it off to Raz now. He's going to go over the webinar, but just kind of keep that information in the back of your mind as we go through this and how it might be able to benefit your organization. Raz, over to you.
Thank you, Liam. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's safe, continues to be so. Very, very excited to have you on the webinar today and talk about a particular application that I think is very relevant in retail and CPG, and that's analytics around loyalty programs. We'll discuss some of the challenges, what we've seen, and essentially see how we can use an agile tool like Alteryx to, I think, solve a very ready problem, a very actionable problem, one that could directly impact the bottom line. My name is Raz. I've worked with Kyrus for about 6 years now. I head up the data science team in the US, and primarily I've focused on CPG, retail, financial services, and nonprofit sectors. And a lot of our work, echoes some of the themes that Liam has mentioned, using agile capable tools like Alteryx to bring in a level of sophistication, of analytical sophistication to, otherwise unsuspecting and perhaps people who thought they couldn't do these things before. So it is we'll see how we can solve a pretty complex problem, I think, in a relatively succinct and short amount of time to really spur discussion and lead to actionable insights. So we're going to be talking about loyalty programs today. And in order to do that, I think we have to understand the retail landscape a little bit. Let's start with sort of the supply chain. This is kind of like the basic, economics 101 of determines like how much a consumer pays for a certain product. Essentially, there's, vendors and manufacturers who sell sometimes through distributors and wholesalers, maybe. Sometimes the distributors are part of the retailer as well. Maybe they're, the warehouses are actually part of the retail chain, but sometimes they're third-party distributors, and then they sell to accounts, and these accounts sell to consumers. And the accounts nowadays, of course, could be traditional brick and mortar, online, all kinds of different channels for shopping. And traditionally, as you go down the supply chain, there's always like a markup that sort of gets added to each point here, so that the middleman essentially can make some money. And as well as going through this supply chain, there's a cost of goods that get added, like freight and operational cost of goods. But a lot of money also gets spent, especially around these areas, on other things like programs, promotions, and campaigns to incentivize people to buy products and to buy goods. And some of the things that we see prominent in retail, like groceries, things like, EDLP, everyday low price, sustaining like a perma sale on an item or a SKU is a pretty big investment, that goes from vendor all the way through to the consumer. Running, price reductions, like sales, basically, that's big. Advertising and sort of the penny savers and whatnot is also very prominent, right? 1 second. Okay, so these are some of the promotional types of spends that we spend money on. That adds essentially to our effective cost of goods, reduces our margins, because we're investing back into the business, yes, to incentivize sales, but it kind of counts against our margins a little bit. There's all kinds of campaigns that we run, like value-added packs, putting two products together to sort of incentivize purchases, point-of-sale trade marketing, having sampling events in the stores, of course, running discounts and sales, and very prominently these days, starting up loyalty card programs and promotions. And loyalty cards are a great way to incentivize purchases. And essentially, by starting a loyalty card program, you really want to reward loyal customers with repeated purchases and incentivize and send them a personalized promotion, unique offers, and reward their loyalty to your brand. And you want to do this, obviously, this leads to sort of an increase, I think, in average check. It leads to an increase in frequency of purchase. It creates a relationship between you and the customer. There's some benefits that we get out of loyalty card programs. For example, customer data. So we actually can put a guest ID down to every purchase. Sometimes on the retail side, if you pay with cash, the company may not know who you actually are. Here, if we use our loyalty card program, we could always tag it to a particular person so that we can understand behavior and trends, meaningful segmentations amongst our customer base. And more importantly, we could use this information to track ROI. So we could start to understand what incentives and promotions have really led to what our targets are, basically to upsell or cross-sell to more profitable SKUs, to higher margin SKUs. And we could track the effectiveness of these campaigns. So we could understand how to start to use levers like price. Price is a huge lever. We could start to understand how to use levers like price to incentivize certain purchases, but we have to do it with a particular clarity and attention to detail so as not to totally destroy our margins by giving away, everything on price just to sort of sell through more volume, as we'll see. So that's today's focus, is to sort of track this ROI. And the game here is, when we look at kind of price curves by products, the game here is, this is like economics 101, is, if we take a look at the volume or sell-through as a function of price for, some products in a category, as we see on the left-hand side here, we get these sort of curves, right? These are like economics 101 curves. The lower the price, the more you sell, because people could afford it and they want more. The higher the price, the less volume you sell through. So you may think, I want to lower the price. But when you take a look at your profits, and remember, your profits are a combination of your cost of goods and plus all those variable expenses we mentioned, like EDLP, sustaining sales and discounts and promos. You put all of that together to form a very granular sort of bottom level net profit or contribution margin sort of picture. Your profits at some point, you can't lower your price too much. There's some inflection point here where if you lower your price too much, you're basically killing your margin, and it starts to be outweighed by your effective or net cost of goods. So that's not good. But if you increase your price too much, then you're killing your sort of throughput on volume. Not enough people are buying it. So on the profit side of things, you see this sort of histogram up here where there's kind of an optimal price point that we want to sell at, so as to not price ourselves out of the market essentially by going too high, but not give away the barn either by going too low and killing our margins. And that's the question we're going to answer today, down to a customer level on a loyalty program. What is the optimal profit or price point to incentivize certain behavior? For example, upselling to a more high margin SKU. What is the price point that I need to sell to this customer to sort of incentivize a purchase? And effectively, what we're doing is going to build a recommendation engine down to customer level based off loyalty card data to recommend, price points and promotions to individuals, a personalized recommendation engine to effectively incentivize certain behavior. That's the problem we're going to tackle today. So, we know when you go to Amazon.com or .ca, there's always this sort of line of items of suggested items of what other people purchased, right? And those are driven by certain algorithms. Those are not randomly just appearing, right? There's certain algorithms underneath the hood on the website that Amazon uses to suggest particular items to you based off your browsing history, based off what they know of you as a consumer, because they segment you into buckets and they know how those segments are to behave and what those segments are interested in. And a lot of those types of analyses are driven maybe first off by market basket analysis. That's one sort of algorithm or approach to do it. That's going to tell you what most common items sold together. So for example, if I buy, burger and fries, most likely I want a drink with that. If I buy coffee, you know, most likely I want a donut. These are just items that sell well together. The classic example is, you know, the dad that goes into the grocery store to get diapers also walks out with a, you know, a can of beer or something like that. So items, you know, tend to, you know, sell well together. Market basket analysis can identify that. Another method is collaborative filtering, and this could get very fancy. Basically, it could tell you, you know, what items did users similar to you prefer or buy, and this is a primary like algorithm used in a lot of these problems. That collaborative filtering is like the proper way to generate a recommendation engine. It's the traditional approach, but there's some problems with it. So, for example, it's not natively available out of the box in Alteryx. So, if I was a citizen data scientist, I couldn't just like do collaborative filtering. I have to write a little Python to do it. It's computationally expensive because it's like basically a matrix solving problem. Those are kind of expensive. And then, you know, if you have sparse data, Amazon has like pretty rich data, I guess. But if you have sparse data, then it could be an issue. So one method that we tend to prefer is to use machine learning to sort of drive these recommendation engines. That's what we're going to do today. And machine learning is a different class of algorithms like neural networks and decision trees and random forests. And we're going to see how we can use machine learning to effectively not only like model loyalty transactions for us and give us the ability to predict whether somebody will or will not buy a promotion, but we'll see that we can use the models then and drive a series of what-if analysis, because that's what I'm really interested in. Not just like tell me what happened or what I would be interested in, but tell me, you know, what should I do? And, you know, I could do this down to a very granular customer level. So let's get into it. We'll show you the Alteryx solutions to these. So let's start with a look at the data. So this is very typical loyalty program transaction data. It kind of looks like this. There's basically like for a given transaction made by a customer on a specific date in a given store, you know, they bought like a series of products probably. This was the price they paid. You know, this was like the actual amount they paid. And they're sometimes associated, you know, they may have been on sale. So the retail price or the shelf price may have been, you know, $6.69 for this product, may have been on sale for $5.49. So you get like a almost 18% discount on that product. Very, very transactional data. You know, customer, there could be, you know, many transactions per customer a given day or across a month or a period, and they just buy a lot of these products. We structured the data. What we really want to do is incentivize purchases to higher margin products. We want to upsell in this example. That's one way of sort of driving profits. We want to upsell. So we broke the brands up into what we call opportunity, which is essentially our lower cost tier product, but also lower margin, and a premium sort of segment of brands that fit into our premium segment, which are a bit higher price, but have essentially higher margins for us. So we want to see if we can incentivize people who traditionally buy, you know, opportunity brands to purchase a premium product. They're not going to do it without some kind of incentive. So the question is, you know, what is that deal level I have to offer, you know, Raz, because he's very cheap. Raz is a very cheap guy. So what deal level do I have to offer him to incentivize a purchase to a higher price point product? That's essentially the problem we're going to solve today. So let's jump into it, go through the demos very quickly, and we'll open the floor up to questions. So step one, this is the Alteryx tool. I'm not going to build this from scratch, this workflow from scratch, because it would take me like way too long for the webinar. So we're just going to pretend like I built this on the fly. But Alteryx is a very visual drag and drop programming platform. And everything you want to do with data has an associated icon up at the top. So for example, you can imagine that, you know, if you want to input some data, well, there's an input data tool, right? So then I would drag that down to the screen and then click on that tool and sort of point to my data source. And from this one tool, you could kind of connect to, variety of flat files like CSVs and Excels and Microsoft Access stuff, to basically like every kind of database that you could see imaginable. So one tool could bring in all of your data. And then there's associated tools to create formulas or new columns, to aggregate things up, select specific rows. do VLOOKUPs or join data together via these tools, you can see that every action I take upon my data has an associated picture up at the top. So the learning curve of this tool really is like kind of like the same learning curve that when you got your first smartphone, you just had to learn what every picture does. So there's always an associated icon with an action on your data that you want to take. And a lot of it is, a lot of the tools we use at the beginning are just to function as transformation or data wrangling tools or cleanup tools. But in the platform, apart from, the data prep and the joining and the transformation tools, we have a whole bunch of other capabilities like spatial, the predictive stuff, which we're going to use today. So I can very easily drag out, once I get my data in the right form. How hard is it to make a neural network model? Not hard at all. Just drag this out onto the canvas and use it, as you'll see. So all of this built into the same platform, very accessible, time series forecasting even here, very accessible to the end user, and I think allows them to do more sophisticated operations on their data than you thought would be possible before. So what are we doing here? So there's kind of always a three-step process to these types of problems. We want to build a recommendation engine. Step one is I got to load and transform my data. So what I'm doing is loading in the data and creating, for example, some measures and sort of some kind of calculations. Things like, how many years have you been a customer? What was the time since your last purchase? Average number of products per transaction. The average check. Did you ever purchase a premium product before? How often do you purchase a premium product? I'm sort of going in and engineering these features, for example, as I sort of want to drive the analysis on some of this. I have a gut feeling that these would be good calculations. Now, you remember if the data is like vertical, it's transactional data, right? My sales, essentially, if I scan over to the right here, right, I have some costs, but my sales is essentially like downward. So it's transactionally structured data. For machine learning, the key is I have to get everything on a row. Machine learning prefers the data to be horizontal. So there's a lot of transformation that I have to do on the data, but I can do that with Alteryx very easily. For example, by pivoting my data here, I could get essentially a data output that looks very much like it could drive a machine learning algorithm where per customer, every row is per customer now. I transposed or pivoted the data so that per customer, I have all of their purchase history and all of the features that I think would be relevant for analysis on one row. So I just flip the data, and that's the whole point of this workflow. And once I do that, I could run my machine learning algorithms, and all machine learning templates will look the same. I got to input some data, make some training and test sets, build the models, analyze the models, output the results for further analysis. And this template is very structured, or very common, I think, is, just a matter of getting your data in the right shape. Like we said, your data has to be in the right flat file structure. But then it's just a matter of dragging out some of these machine learning tools onto the canvas and building your models. And our models essentially are capturing behavior and trying to simulate what's happening in real life, but they also describe to us patterns and unique things in the data. So for example, coming out of, the random forest model, I start to understand things like this, which is my variable importance plot. So this starts to tell me what features or what columns and fields in your data start to, be impactful on the target. And the target here, which I perhaps didn't describe, is whether on your next purchase to the store, you will or will not buy a premium product. We want to calculate the probability of you, doing this. We want to drive purchases to the more premium price point. So I start to see that things like, well, the discount depth, is essentially the deal level that you're giving me, is probably one of the most important things. Makes sense. Your premium purchase rate, your history of buying premium products, next most important thing. How many years have, or how much time has passed since your last purchase? What's your average check? What's your discount? And then my whole product purchase history starting to become important down the line. So it's starting to describe to me what are the important patterns and fields in my data. And I could get a few other analyses out. So for example, partial response plots are very popular. So I could start to see, well, and answer the question of, well, if I give you a certain deal level, what's the probability of essentially purchasing a more premium product as a function of that deal level getting better? If I give you 10% discount, it's here. 20%, 30%. You could see as the more and more discount I give you, obviously the higher probability you have to purchase. These are some of the cool features we get out of the data. This is what machine learning does. It learns these patterns in the data set. So we built a model essentially to capture these patterns. And the whole purpose of using the model then is to, yes, we learn cool things about our data in terms of the patterns, but I could use it in a what-if analysis. And what I'm going to do now is essentially feed the model a series of scenarios, saying essentially I'm going to feed it, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% discount level to all the people who are predicted not to purchase a premium product on their next visit to the store. I want to see if I can incentivize and flip them and convert them to people who will purchase. So I'm going to start to incrementally offer them better and better deal levels to kind of gauge and see, when I could flip each one of these people. And this is at a granular person level. And I could do that once I have the model, because essentially, remember, my model, which in case here I picked a neural network, is like a simulation of real life. So I could test consumer responses and behaviors. And once I do that, I see essentially, well, if I offer them whatever deal level I want, I could convert about 25% of my people who are not going to purchase a product. I can drive that. But the caveats are that I don't want to sort of offer too much so as to kill my margins. And I can visualize, where that inflection point is going to be, for example, by looking at sort of the results of that analysis I just ran, that iterative what-if analysis. So here's my initial price point. I'm around $669 or $650. And if I start to offer deal levels, you can see my price start to go down, right? I scaled it this way, but the number of people I convert to a purchase starts to go up. So that's great. If I go all the way down and give them, $2 off, essentially, I could convert like 25% of my people. But I don't want to go too far down because I have associated costs with my product. And at some point, I'm just going to not only zero my margin, I'm going to kill my margins and end up with negative profits. And that cutoff point is somewhere around, $1 off or something like that. And we see this histogram behavior here and also here. And this is two sort of customer types. These are customers who are never offered a deal level. You give them something and they're willing to convert. These are other customers who are sort of in the middle and need a little bit more incentive. But the large portion of customers, you'd have to cut your margins way, way too much in order to sort of convert them. It may be worth getting their loyalty, may not definitely be worth it from a profit point of view. So that's just some of the ways we can quickly put data together, transform it, build models in Alteryx, and sort of really drive discussion points to, and understand our patterns in our data and get the value and insights out of our data. Like Liam said, we can start to understand what's important. We could start to understand how things are going to change as a function of, tuning various levers. And all of that allows us to sort of build and select the right promotions to drive increased upsell to more premium products in this loyalty card example. So the time is now, and I'll pass it back to Ariel to sort of wrap up the discussion, but I hope that was a useful walkthrough of the typical loyalty card program use case that we typically do.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thanks a lot, Raz. And obviously, there's many more questions you probably have about the workflow and how it's implemented. And we can certainly have that discussion at a different time. But what was interesting is really the insight out of it and how quickly using a tool like Alteryx, we were able to do all those steps we needed to go through and compare the data across different predictions to get the right price point that we needed. So with that, this is really kind of what we typically see from our customers. They want to go through that journey, as Liam mentioned at the beginning. They want to become data-driven. A lot of them follow kind of that sequential path of getting the raw data, cleaning it up, maybe building a warehouse, adding some advanced tools to do some maybe self-service analytics. And they want to get to the point where they become AI-driven or at least machine learning-driven and build those type of predictions, but they just kind of stuck in that sequential path. What we see now happening with using tools like Alteryx is that you can really start accelerating and do those type of more advanced predictions, more valuable use cases, analytics in parallel. You don't have to wait until you complete your sequence and the flow to get started with those quick experiments that ultimately turned into not just experiments, but valuable operational automated solutions as part of your workflow. And this is why we at Curious we love Alteryx from that perspective, because it really offers not just the machine learning abilities in the tools using drag and drop, but also all the other steps that you typically need to go through, especially the data preparation piece, and that you need to model in a way that would work for the machine learning models. This is all kind of nicely available in one environment. So as mentioned, that is the message. The time is now to kind of really accelerate and pick those topics. We at Curious are here to help you along that journey. We can help you with defining the strategy and the roadmap and the use cases you would want to tackle. And then, of course, down to the implementation, whether it's data engineering and moving your data to the cloud, whether it's a data discovery and understanding what the data is telling you, or even all the way down to those advanced use cases that we just demonstrated with data science-based applications or solutions. So with that, as we promised, we won't take more than half an hour at a time, but we are happy to take any questions that you have on that. Feel free to also contact us following this email and this webinar. You have our emails displayed on the screen, and you can, of course, reach out as well for the traditional contact forms on the website. We do have one question here asked for you. It's a question around what additional data sets you would typically add to your predictive analysis around the price points to increase the accuracy of your predictions.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. All we did was take the transactional data and use your purchase history as sort of the input lever. So really just playing with price. We've done other things. So for example, input competitor data, competitor prices, and promotions that are going on. For some products, weather also became important to incentivize certain purchases to other products or categories, whether it was a driver. So any third-party data sets we could get our hands on. And I think the important thing there, even the ability to calculate, a margin, a contribution margin, getting all your sales and promotions and cost of goods data together is not always the easiest thing either, but getting that all into one place certainly is a great place to start as well.
Perfect. There's one more question here around, I guess it's two questions in one question. So the first part of it is, how do you choose the best model to execute a prediction? We saw in the workflow that you had the decision trees and the random forest and other types of machine learning algorithms used with the different Alteryx tools. How do you choose the best one to use? And the second question, the follow-up question to that one is, how do you operationalize this model and have the data flowing through those predictions and scoring automatically?
Yeah, great question. We typically try and train all the models we have available to us just to see how everything performs. Choosing a model comes down to maybe picking the best one that performs the best in terms of like accuracy or some success metric under data. That's one way of doing it. We favor neural nets here because I know they offer a smooth response curve to variable inputs that I like to change in a what-if analysis. The tree methods, like random forest, sort of gets around, but decision tree certainly does not give you that smooth response. It's more like plateaued. So we went with neural network, gave us a really good high accuracy, like 85% accuracy on on the test set of data, and offers us that smooth response. To operationalize these models, not an easy question, right? A lot of engineering goes into it. Typically, you have to put the model somewhere, have to deploy it either to an API endpoint. In Alteryx, there's a product called Promote, which will move these models up to a place where you can use them in downstream applications. And what you typically see then in the day-to-day usage is like this methodology, this loyalty program sort of engine, recommendation engine, coupled with something like a CDP tool, a consumer data platform tool, that can get certain probabilities out. We get basically the probability that Raz will buy a product at this price point. I could take those probabilities, segment them and create certain specific offers and deal levels, which I can then email out using the CDP platform. So that's a typical integration that we see as well.
Fantastic. Okay. Looks like that covers most of our questions here. Again, feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions following this. We hope you enjoyed this, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.